snow didn't fall gently that night. It came down hard, sharp, and unforgiving, turning the streets of Seoul into white silence. Most offices were empty by then, lights dark, people already home. But Evelyn Carter was still standing in her boss's office, spine straight, hands numb, listening to him speak like she wasn't even there. "Go fix it," he said, shoving papers into her hands. "Now." She looked at the clock, looked at the snow piling against the windows. He knew exactly what he was doing. He always did. Evelyn didn't argue. She never did anymore. She needed the job. She needed the paycheck. She needed to survive. So she stepped outside. The cold hit her like punishment. Wind cut through her thin coat. Snow soaked her shoes in seconds. Each step down the street felt heavier than the last, her breath breaking into shallow clouds she couldn't control. Halfway down the block, her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the pavement, clipboard slipping from her fingers, the world narrowing to white and dark and quiet. From the office window above, her boss watched for a moment, then turned away. That should have been the end. It wasn't. At the corner, a black sedan idled, engine low, windows tinted. The man inside had been watching longer than anyone realized. When the door opened, the snow didn't slow him down. Park Min-jae stepped into the storm. Power followed him even here, silent, absolute. His jaw tightened when he saw her on the ground. Recognition hit like a blow. He crossed the street in seconds, dropping to his knees beside her, already pulling off his coat. Evelyn. Her lips were pale. Her body shook violently. She clutched the papers like they were the only thing anchoring her to the world. Min-jae lifted her into his arms with familiarity that hadn't faded, not even after years apart. The way her head fit against his chest. The way her weight felt wrong. Too light. The car door opened. He got in without hesitation, holding her through the drive, counting each breath like a man who had forgotten how to pray but was trying anyway. By the time they reached the penthouse, the snow was still falling, and 5 years of silence had just shattered. The snow swallowed sound first. Evelyn noticed it as she stepped out of the building. The way the city seemed to retreat, the wind stealing the edges of everything familiar. The glass door slid shut behind her with a soft hiss that felt final. Her boss didn't follow. He never did. "Don't come back until it's done," he had said, eyes already moving past her, hand raised in dismissal like she was an inconvenience he'd finally learned how to erase. Evelyn pulled her coat tighter as she reached the sidewalk. It was too thin for this kind of cold. She knew that. He knew that too. Snow blew sideways, sharp as needles against her cheeks. Within seconds, her shoes were soaked through, socks clinging uselessly to numb skin. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the ground itself was pushing back. She told herself to keep moving. She always did. Half a block in, her fingers stopped responding. The clipboard slipped from her grip and hit the pavement with a dull crack. She bent to pick it up and nearly didn't make it back upright. The world tilted, light smearing into colorless streaks. Her breath came shallow now, tearing at her chest. She tasted metal. Panic tried to rise, but even that felt distant, muffled by exhaustion that went deeper than this night. Years of swallowing words. Years of standing still while people decided she was small. Her knees buckled. Evelyn went down hard, the impact knocking the air from her lungs. Snow rushed up to meet her, cold seeping through fabric into bone. She rolled onto her side, trying to push herself back up, but her arms wouldn't cooperate. They trembled, then gave up entirely. She lay there, cheek pressed to ice, watching flakes collect on her lashes. From the office window above, she could see the glow of lights. Warm, safe. For a second, just a second, she hoped he might look again, might realize how far he'd gone. The blinds shifted, then closed. Something inside her went quiet. Evelyn's vision narrowed to white and gray. Her breathing slowed, each inhale a fight she was losing. The cold wasn't sharp anymore. It was dull, heavy, almost gentle in the way it wrapped around her. Maybe this is how it ends, she thought. Not with noise or drama, just a slow fading no one bothered to notice. Her fingers curled weakly around the edge of the clipboard, a pointless reflex, like holding on to proof she'd existed here at all. The snow kept falling, and somewhere, just beyond the edge of her dimming sight, an engine idled, low, steady, waiting. The car door opened into the storm. Cold rushed in, sharp and biting, but Park Min-jae barely registered it. His attention was fixed on the figure crumpled on the pavement, half buried in snow like the city had already decided she was done. "Stay," his driver said instinctively, hand lifting. Min-jae was already out of the car. Snow soaked through his shoes as he crossed the street, his steps fast and controlled, the kind of movement that came from years of acting before thinking. He dropped to his knees beside her, breath catching despite himself. Evelyn. Her name left him before he could stop it. She didn't respond. Her lashes were dusted white, her lips pale, her breathing shallow and uneven. One hand was clenched around a clipboard like it mattered, like it was the last thing anchoring her to the world. Something tight and dangerous snapped inside his chest. He shrugged out his coat and wrapped it around her without hesitation, pulling her closer, shielding her from the wind. She was colder than she should have been. Too still, too light. "Hey!" he murmured, low and steady, as if his voice alone might keep her here. "Stay with me." Her body shuddered weakly, a reflex more than a response. Min-jae lifted her into his arms, familiar despite the years that separated them, one arm under her knees, the other supporting her back. The weight of her felt wrong, lighter than memory, fragile in a way that cut deeper than the cold. The driver had the back door open before Min-jae reached the car. Inside, warmth rushed to meet them. Min-jae settled in, adjusting her against his chest, his hand firm at her shoulder, grounding her. Her head fell against him, breath brushing faintly against his collarbone. "She's hypothermic," he said calmly, though his hands trembled just enough to betray him. "Home. Now." The car pulled away, tires cutting through slush as the city blurred past the windows. Min-jae didn't look up. He counted her breaths instead. 1, 2, 3. Too slow. Still there. He pressed his chin lightly against her hair, eyes fixed ahead, jaw locked so tightly it ached. 5 years. 5 years of silence, distance, choice layered on top of regret. He had told himself this was the cost of keeping her alive. Now she was breaking in his arms anyway. When they reached the building, the doors opened instantly. No questions, no delays. His staff moved fast, trained to react without curiosity. They had seen him carry injured men before. They had never seen him carry a woman. Min-jae laid Evelyn gently onto the bed, adjusting the blankets. Staying close as a doctor was summoned, heat turned up, towels warmed. He didn't step back. Didn't let go until he was forced to. Only then did he sit, elbows on his knees, hands clasped, watching her chest rise and fall. Snow continued to fall outside the windows, and with it, 5 years of carefully buried restraint began to thaw. Evelyn woke like someone trained to wake afraid. Her eyes flew open, breath sharp, heart already racing as she scanned the room for danger. The ceiling was unfamiliar, too high, too clean. Warm light glowed softly from the corners. Heat wrapped around her body, gentle and disorienting. This wasn't the street. She pushed herself upright too fast, dizziness crashing in waves. The blanket slid to her waist. Her hands trembled, not from cold this time, but from the sudden, terrible awareness of being somewhere she hadn't chosen. Then she saw him. Park Min-jae sat in a chair beside the bed, elbows resting on his knees, hands loosely clasped. He hadn't moved. He hadn't spoken. He was simply there, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Her chest tightened painfully. "No," she whispered. The word came out thin, almost broken. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, panic rising. "No, not you. Evelyn," he said quietly. Her head snapped up. "Don't say my name like that." Her voice shook, but her eyes burned. "Don't sit there like you have the right." She stood, or tried to. The room tilted. Her knees buckled, and she grabbed the edge of the nightstand to stay upright. Min-jae didn't reach for her. He remembered that about her, how she hated being steadied. without permission. "I need to leave," she said. "Now." "It's 3 in the morning," he replied evenly. "There's a blizzard outside. You were hypothermic 2 hours ago." "I don't care." "I know," he said, "and that hurt more than anything else." Silence stretched between them, thick with things neither of them had said for 5 years. Evelyn stared at the floor, jaw clenched so hard it ached. She felt cornered, not by walls, but by memory. "Why am I here?" she asked finally. "Because you were dying in the snow," Min-jae said, "and I couldn't drive past you. I already made that mistake once." Her fingers curled into fists. "You should have." The words landed like a blow. He absorbed it without flinching. "You disappeared," she said, each word steady with practiced restraint. "One night you told me not to come back, and then you vanished. No explanation. No goodbye. I rebuilt my life from that." Min-jae leaned forward slightly, his voice low, "and I've lived with it every day since." She laughed, sharp and humorless. "That makes one of us." Her gaze drifted to the window, where snow still fell in heavy silence over the city. 5 years ago, she had loved him without knowing the cost. She had believed fire could be warmth without also being destruction. She knew better now. Min-jae watched her like a man standing in the ruins of something he once built with care. "I didn't stop loving you," he said quietly. "I stopped coming near you." Evelyn closed her eyes. 5 years of silence pressing around them, not empty, not gone, just waiting to be acknowledged. And for the first time since the snow, she realized this wasn't just a rescue. It was a reckoning. Min-jae didn't speak right away. He stood and walked to the window, resting one hand against the glass as snow slid down the city beyond it. When he finally turned back, the control he wore like armor had softened, just enough to show what it cost him to keep it on. "The night everything ended," he said, "you walked into a place you weren't meant to be." Evelyn's shoulders stiffened. She remembered the smell of smoke, the echo of shouting, the look on his face when he saw her there. Something like terror sharpened into certainty. "I told you not to come back," he continued. "I told you to leave, and then I disappeared." "You erased me," she said. "I hid you," he corrected quietly. Her laugh was bitter. "By breaking me?" Min-jae met her gaze. "By keeping you alive?" He took a breath, slow and deliberate. "They had been watching us, longer than I knew. My rivals, men who don't lose without taking something with them. They knew about you, where you went, what you meant to me." Evelyn's hands tightened on the edge of the bed. "That night," he said, "they sent a message, not with bullets, with proof." His jaw tightened. "Photographs. You leaving cafes, sitting in parks, sleeping in my bed. They put them on my desk before the raid even started." Her breath caught. "They were going to take you," Min-jae went on. "Use you, make me choose." Evelyn stood slowly, the room suddenly too small. "You could have told me." "If I told you," he said, voice cracking for the first time, "you would have stayed, and they would have killed you." She shook her head, tears blurring her vision. "You don't know that." "I do," he said. "They killed my mother the same way, to punish my father. I watched it happen. I was 17. The words landed with devastating weight. "I had 2 choices," he said. "Keep you close and let them hunt you, or make you hate me so completely they believe you meant nothing." His eyes were wet now. He didn't look away. "So I chose a lie that would save your life." Evelyn pressed a hand to her mouth. 5 years of anger, abandonment, and self-doubt shifted, cracked open by a truth she had never been allowed to imagine. "You let me believe I wasn't enough," she whispered. "I let you believe I didn't care," Min-jae said, "because your hatred was safer than my love." Silence fell, heavy and aching. Evelyn sank back onto the bed, shaking. She thought of every night she'd spent convincing herself she'd been discarded. Every morning she'd forced herself to move on. "You destroyed me," she said softly. "I know," he replied, "and I would do it again if it meant you were breathing." Tears slid down her cheeks unchecked. She didn't wipe them away. For the first time, the past rearranged itself, not kinder, but honest. And in that honesty, the wall she'd built for 5 years finally began to crumble. Evelyn learned about it the way people always learned about endings. Quietly, through fragments. A notification buzzed on her phone while she sat at the kitchen counter, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't asked for but somehow needed. She glanced at the screen, expecting nothing. Instead, she saw her company's name. Then another alert, and another. Labor violations, unpaid overtime, workplace endangerment. She frowned, scrolling slowly, a strange calm settling over her chest. Numbers followed, percentages, words like investigation and suspension and pending charges. Across the room, Min-jae stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and precise. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. By noon, the company's stock had dipped sharply. By afternoon, suppliers began pulling out. Contracts quietly terminated with polite language that masked absolute refusal. People who had once answered her boss's calls stopped picking up. By evening, his name was trending. Evelyn stared at the screen, pulse steady. She felt no thrill, no rush, just a deep, unexpected stillness. "He's been doing this for years," she said finally, more to herself than to Min-jae. "I wasn't special." Min-jae ended the call and turned. "You were targeted," he said. "That makes it worse." The next morning, a headline crossed her feed: embezzlement, falsified invoices, accounts frozen pending prosecution. The article mentioned a warrant. No mugshot yet, just a slow, public unraveling of a man who had built his power on humiliation and silence. Evelyn closed her eyes. She didn't feel victorious. She felt angry. "I want to see him," she said. Min-jae studied her for a long moment. No warning, no objection. Then he nodded. "All right." The office looked smaller than she remembered, dimmer. Her former boss sat behind his desk, shoulders hunched, phone discarded, lawyers whispering urgently at his side. He looked up when she entered and didn't recognize her at first. Then he did. His face drained of color. Evelyn walked to the desk and placed her badge down carefully, like punctuation at the end of a sentence. "You sent me out to die," she said. Her voice didn't shake. "You made me believe I was nothing." The room went silent. "I'm standing," she continued. "You're not." She didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked out, heels clicking softly against the floor, each step lighter than the last. Outside, the cold brushed her face, but it no longer owned her. Behind her, a life built on cruelty collapsed without a single scream. And Evelyn didn't look back. The whisper started before Evelyn ever heard a word. She felt it first, a tightening at the back of her neck, when she stood near the window, a sense of being measured when the elevator doors closed too slowly. The same black SUV parked across the street for longer than coincidence allowed. She knew that feeling. She'd lived inside it once before. Min-jae didn't say anything at first. He moved through the penthouse with the same calm precision as always, jacket removed. Phone calls taken in low Korean she couldn't follow, guards rotating shifts without explanation. But something in the air had changed. Not louder, sharper. "You're being watched," Evelyn said one evening, not turned from the window. "Yes," Min-jae replied from behind her. She looked over her shoulder. "How long?" "Since the snow stopped," he said. "Maybe before." That honesty mattered. It always had. Down in the city, the rumor spread the way dangerous things do. Softly, through mouths that knew better than to speak loudly. The boss had brought a woman home. Not a transaction. Not a visitor. A woman. Foreign. Beautiful. Untouchable. Until she wasn't. By nightfall, the whisper had reached the wrong ears. Park Sung-ho heard it over dinner, a casual remark from a man who owed him money and didn't know when to stop talking. Sung-ho smiled slowly, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "A woman," he repeated. "Min-jae's." He rolled a coin across his knuckles, thinking of old debts and older grudges, thinking of how long he'd waited for proof that Min-jae was human after all. "Find out who she is," he said, "and what she's worth." Evelyn felt the shift the next morning. Min-jae came home later than usual, jaw tight, movement precise in a way that meant he was holding something back. He loosened his tie, poured a drink, didn't touch it. "People are asking questions," she said. He didn't deny it. "They'll stop." "They never do," she replied quietly. Min-jae met her gaze. For a moment, the distance between them felt fragile, dangerous. "You're safe here," he said. "You said that before," Evelyn answered, not accusing, remembering. Silence settled between them, thick with shared understanding. Outside, the city glowed, indifferent and awake. Somewhere beyond the glass, men were talking, watching, calculating. Weakness was being whispered, and this time it had a name. The first shot shattered the quiet before anyone saw the car. It cracked through the night like the city itself had split open, echoing between buildings, sharp and unmistakable. Glass burst somewhere below. A shout followed. Then another. Evelyn was already moving. Min-jae's hand caught her wrist, firm but careful, pulling her back from the window just as a second shot tore through the space where she'd been standing. The glass exploded inward, fragments scattering across the floor like ice. "Down," he said, voice calm, absolute. She dropped with him behind the marble counter as alarms screamed to life. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Men shouted in Korean, short, clipped commands that carried no panic, only execution. This wasn't chaos. This was planned. Min-jae reached under the counter and came up with a gun, movement smooth, practiced. Evelyn watched him for a fraction of a second. This version of him, lethal and precise, the man he had tried to keep her away from. The door blew inward. Gunfire ripped through the room, deafening, blinding. Min-jae returned fire without hesitation. Control bursts that dropped one man, then another. Blood splashed across the white floor, stark and impossible to ignore. Evelyn pressed her hands to her ears, heart slamming against her ribs, forcing herself to stay present, to stay low. She smelled smoke, heard glass crunch under boots. A scream cut short. Min-jae moved, positioning himself between her and the door, body a shield without question. A bullet grazed his shoulder. He didn't slow. "Stay with me," he said, not looking back. She crawled toward him, every instinct screaming to run, but she didn't. She stayed. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft, almost beautiful as it drifted past shattered windows and flashing lights. Red stained the white where bodies lay, impossible to hide. Sirens wailed in the distance. More gunfire answered. It ended as suddenly as it began. Silence rushed in, heavy and ringing. Min-jae lowered the gun slowly, breath steady despite the blood seeping through his sleeve. His men secured the room with practiced efficiency, voices low, movements precise. Evelyn stared at the floor, at the blood pooling where snowflakes melted into the broken glass. "This is what loving me costs," Min-jae said quietly. She looked up at him, eyes burning, fear and fury tangled together. "No," she said. "This is what people who want to control you do." He searched her face, something raw and shaken breaking through his composure. Outside, the snow kept falling, settling over the street like it could erase what had happened. But Evelyn knew better now. Once blood touched white, there was no pretending it had never been there. Morning came pale and quiet, like the city was holding its breath. Evelyn stood by the window, wrapped in a borrowed sweater, watching workers replace the shattered glass below. Snow clung to the edges of the street, thinned and dirty now, refusing to disappear. The night felt close, as if it had never really ended. Behind her, Min-jae sat at the long table, phone after phone lighting up as calls came in. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every word he spoke landed with finality. "No retaliation," he said into one call. "Stand down." A pause. His jaw tightened. "Yes, all of it." He ended the call and picked up the next. "Transfer the accounts. Effective immediately." Another pause. "I'm aware of the consequences." Evelyn turned slowly. "What are you doing?" Min-jae looked at her then, really looked, like he was choosing his words as carefully as he was choosing his future. "I'm ending it." Her breath caught. "Ending what?" "The throne," he he said quietly. The structure that makes men like Sung-ho believe blood is currency. He stood and walked to her, stopping a careful distance away. This world was built to survive without mercy. I told myself I could change it from inside. His gaze softened. I was wrong. Evelyn searched his face for doubt. Found none. Only resolve edged with something like relief. They will come for you, she said. They already have, Min-jae replied. This ended that cycle. By noon, the city shifted. Key figures were arrested on charges that had been waiting patiently for years. Accounts froze. Properties were seized. Alliances collapsed overnight. Men scrambling to save themselves as the ground disappeared beneath them. Min-jae's name was whispered again, but this time with uncertainty. Evelyn watched from a distance as he signed documents, handed over keys, dismantled the machinery that had once defined him. Each signature felt like a door closing, not slammed, not locked, just gently shut. Do you regret it? She asked softly. Min-jae shook his head. I regret waiting. When the last call ended, silence filled the room. Real silence, not the kind that had violence underneath. Min-jae exhaled slowly, like a man who had been holding his breath for years. If you leave now, he said, I won't stop you. I won't protect you with shadows anymore. Evelyn stepped closer. And if I stay, then it's as equals, he said. No empire, no fear, just choice. Outside, the snow began to melt. The throne was empty. And for the first time, Min-jae stood without it and did not fall. The city felt different without the weight of watching eyes. Evelyn noticed it first in the small things. The way the elevator doors closed without hesitation, the absence of men stationed in hallways, the quiet that didn't feel like a threat. Morning light filled the apartment gently now, unfiltered by urgency. She stood in the doorway with her coat on, keys in hand. Min-jae watched her from across the room, expression unreadable, hands relaxed at his sides. He hadn't tried to stop her, hadn't asked where she was going. He'd meant what he said. Choice. I'm meeting a friend, Evelyn said. I might be gone a few hours. He nodded once. All right. That was it. No orders. No conditions. Something in her chest loosened. When she returned that evening, snowmelt clung to the edges of the streets, water running freely where ice had ruled days before. She took her time unlocking the door, stepping inside. Min-jae was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hands dusted with flour like he'd tried something unfamiliar and didn't mind failing at it. He looked up, surprised. You came back, he said, not hopeful, not relieved, just honest. Evelyn set her keys down. I told you I would. Silence settled between them, softer than before. I could leave, she said. Start somewhere new, somewhere no one knows my name. I know, Min-jae replied, and I would help you if that's what you wanted. She studied him, the man who had once ruled through fear, now standing unarmed in a quiet kitchen, offering her an open door instead of a cage. But that wouldn't be choosing, she said. That would still be running. She stepped closer. I don't want to be protected by distance anymore, and I don't want to be held by power. Min-jae's breath caught. Evelyn. I'm here, she said gently, not because I need you, not because I owe you, because I want you. The words settled between them, solid and real. Min-jae reached for her slowly, stopping just short, waiting. She closed the space herself, resting her forehead against his chest. His arms came around her then, not tight, not claiming, just present. For the first time, there was no fear threaded through the closeness. Outside, the last of the snow slid from rooftops, water dripping steadily onto pavement. Winter releasing its grip. Evelyn smiled softly. We do this without chains. Min-jae pressed his forehead to hers. Without fear, they stood there in the quiet, not rescued, not owned, only chosen. And this time that was enough.